If you just tribute channel fans are interested, you know, I spent 7 years of my life founding and running Rolling Stones records for the Rolling Stones. But I also was involved in the Rolling Stones early recordings at Chess Records, where they actually started writing the song Satisfaction and later finished it. Check out this lecture about the Rolling Stones at Chess Records, but also about Exile on Main Street. So it ties in my career completely, how I met the Rolling Stones and working with them at Rolling Stones Records. Check out this lecture. You're going to find it interesting.
But when the Stones were in LA for those brief period of time, they met up with Phil Spector, who invited them to a session that he was doing at RCA Studios, which was just down the street from us here, right next to, across the street from the Cinerama Dome, which is, and then it became now, I think it's the LA Theater, Film School or something now. But this was the legendary RCA Studios. Sinatra recorded there, Elvis did a lot of his recording there, Sam Cooke did everything there, and the Stones were introduced to this studio. And the key to this is that this will become home for them over the next critical period of time in their next couple of years, that they would do all their most iconic recording in this studio. And the thing that is so striking about it is the people they met as well. When they came back a few months later on that first tour, they played again in Los Angeles at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium in a show that was filmed called The Tammy Show, and I'm sure many of you know, have seen the film many, many times. And that night, the conductor of the band playing behind all the groups was the iconic Jack Nietzsche. And he was then, of course, also Phil Spector's arranger and conductor. And he introduced the Stones to an engineer named Dave Hassinger, and he was the chief engineer at RCA Studios. And he invited them in and said, let's record here. So one of the points I want to make about the Stones that distinguishes them not only from the Beatles, content-wise, but from every other British band at that time. If you were signed to a label deal in England, you were obligated to use the studios and the facilities that that label had. So if you were on EMI and all their labels, the Beatles, for example, were required to record at Abbey Road, and that's not a loss, but it was a very constrictive, strained environment. Engineers in England would actually come to the studio wearing white smocks like they were in a laboratory. And the artists were not allowed to talk to them directly at all. They couldn't touch a microphone. They were not even allowed to have an idea about how anything should sound, how the drums should sound, I want my bass mic'd a certain way. You couldn't even say a word. It would have been like, you would have been cast off and sent off, and that would have been, you would have lost a record deal if you had that sort of moxie. But the Rolling Stones were different. How so? They were signed to a very ambitious and audacious young man, even younger than them, named Andrew Oldham. And he was very clever in the kind of throw shit against the wall and see what sticks kind of way, because he was making it up as he was going along. There were no rule books. The Stones were famously signed to Decca Records, but not really. They were actually signed to Impact Productions. Andrew had set up his own production company, which is very unique for the time, unprecedented almost. And he had signed the Stones to his production company. So even though they were recording for Decca Records, and Decca had all these territories around the world where their products were licensed, in our country we would get it on London Records, if you remember the little blue labels. But the Stones themselves were not signed in that sense. They were not signed directly to Decca, so they were not obligated to record at Decca Studios. So when they came to Los Angeles, it was Andrew's brilliant idea that, because he couldn't stand the formality and the hierarchy of these British studios, and that he wanted his artists to really reflect America, because for the Brits, of course, coming to America was everything, particularly coming to a studio where Elvis Presley had recorded. I mean, it was like going to Lourdes if you were Bernadette or something, So in that sense, he gave them entree into a world that no other British band had any opportunity to, which not only changed their mindset, but also gave them an opportunity to create a sound that was uniquely theirs. Bill Wyman tells a story about how the first time they walked into RCA, they were just so blown away by how big it was. Because of course this is a studio where they have orchestras for scoring, for films and whatnot. So this was the exact opposite of everything they had previously experienced in England, which were mostly these little like rehearsal rooms where all the musicians are clustered on top of each other. So the sound actually has a kind of unique signature. That's why everything leaks when you hear those early 60s records, because the bands they're on top of each other. There's like two mics and they're picking up everything. And even Chess Studios, if you could see pictures of them, if you pull them up on the internet, whatever, the studio itself was smaller than this room. And you had a piano and an organ, and there's the baffling for the drums, and the band is on top of themselves. And then they walk into the big stage at RCA, and their imaginations expanded to accommodate the space. Bill said they were just utterly intimidated walking in that room. And yet Andrew was adamant that this was the place for them and gave them the confidence. And he describes it not as a vibe, but as a tone. He said, you know, we grew up in England and it was dreary and cold and overcast, and you go into a session and you were just miserable going in and you were miserable coming out. But when you went to RCA in LA, you'd be in there all night long working, and you come outside at 7 o'clock in the morning and the sun is up and you're going for breakfast and you're in Hollywood, and it's like that tone told us that we had arrived. And if you're young and you're in their 20s, and the transformation itself was really extraordinary. I want to briefly show a couple of things that I brought from my own personal archive to kind of highlight some of this. The Stones continued to come through LA. In 1965, they had a couple of tours of the States, and of course came to LA. And so important was recording at RCA that they had set up their first tour of Australasia, where they went to Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand. But they arranged the tour so that they flew from London. Normally, if you're in England and you're going to Australia, you go that way. But they flew to Los Angeles, got off the plane, went straight to RCA Studios from the airport, correct, and recorded the last time. And then left the studio, got on an airplane, and flew 18 hours to go to their tour in Australia. That's commitment, okay? Then they came back a few months later, in May of 1965, and that was a very apocal LA trip. So not only did they headline the TV show Shindig, which you all remember, of course, famously, an iconic show, but most famously because the Stones were invited to bring any guests they wanted to join them that night, and they decided to introduce a young white teen America to Mr. Chester Burnett, aka Howlin' Wolf. And he came on like your parents' worst nightmare, like, oh my gosh, what is this? And for those of you who don't know, Howlin' Wolf was a big man, a really big man. And you had these kind of soppy, pimply teenagers who are all excited about discovering Clearasil. And then they're looking up at this kind of black presence, this Buddha-like presence, and he had this kind of large, quiet presence about him. And then he started to sing, and you could literally feel the crossroads right there. I mean, it's like, what the fuck, okay? And while they were in town, they did some radio, of course, and just a couple of quick photographs pushing me along, but I can't resist, so I hope you'll indulge me for just a couple more.
And Chicago. Well, I was in Chicago a little while ago, and I came across this restaurant. I went in and I found the chap singing the blues. I thought he was fantastic, so I booked him. And it turned out to be somebody you know about. In fact, he's quite famous, isn't he, in Britain?
Yes, well, he was the first one that recorded Little Red Rooster.
Was he? When did you... Tell us something about him, Brian.
Well, when we first started playing together, we started playing because we wanted to play rhythm and blues, and Howlin' Wolf was one of our greatest idols, and it's a great pleasure to find you being booked on this show tonight. It really is a pleasure. Thanks to Howlin' Jackwood.
Oh,
So I think it's about time you shut up and we had Howlin' Wolf on stage.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Let's get him on. Howlin' Wolf, bring him on.